the digital economy, the innovation economy is growing today at 2.8 times faster than the regular GDP. Just like we assure law and order for any citizen in his or her neighborhood, it is as important for us to ensure that the internet is a safe and trusted place. Who would have thought? Who would have thought in 2010-11 when I set out to fight the UPA government on the issue of privacy, that 7, 10, 8 years later, that I would be given this opportunity to help frame this legislation. We did something that has never been done in the history of Indian legislation, which is we did a pre-consultation before the legislation was even drafted.
New technology is developing faster than the speed of light. This presents amazing opportunities as well as potential hazards, bringing the Ministry for Electronics and IT firmly in the spotlight. The new Digital India Bill is also expected this year, and everybody is speculating about the rules, provisions, and safeguards that will be included in the bill. With the growing force of AI and social media, balancing freedom of speech with national security risks is not an easy job. Our guest is at the forefront of carving out a new digital regime for India and creating a positive ecosystem for startups and innovation, which is why he works 24/7 and which is why Buzz by the Bay left the Bay and came to the freezing capital to catch up with him. We are very honored to have on the show Minister of State for IT and Electronics and for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka.
Thank you so much.
Warm welcome and introduction.
Well, we had to give this elaborate introduction. You, after all, do work all the time. And that's why we're really grateful to have your time, especially today. The day that we are recording was the first, the kickstart to the budget session.
Correct.
Other developments, political developments. So you have had
it's
quite
been a busy day, yes.
A very intense day.
Correct.
So let's start with discussing that. Of course, there will be a few days before this airs and some developments may take place, just putting it out there for the audience. So budget session, everybody is expecting, or everybody knows that IT is going to get significant focus, right?
Look, I'm not sure the budget is going to put a lot of focus on IT in particular. This is, as you know, it's a vote on account. It's the budget that the finance minister just placed presence before the elections. So it won't be like the other budgets that the people of India are used to, which will be very elaborate and detailed. This will be certainly just a budget that is a statement of what the year will look like, what the year has been, and what we have to look forward to. So I think the real budget, if you want to call it the real versus this is not really a budget, will be post-election.
Right.
And that's always the case after every election.
Yes.
And this happened in 2019 and it's happening today as well. But to the point that you make about digital and the excitement around the digital economy, the president herself today mentioned in many times in her speech and recognized the transformative effect that technology has had on India. None of your viewers, even if they are even a little prejudiced against the BJP or the government, will argue against the fact that the last 10 years have been deeply transformative. Absolutely. And has really catapulted India into a different league completely in terms of our economy, our capabilities, and our ambitions. So digital has played a significant role in that, and our Prime Minister way back in 2015 envisioned a country where governance, people's lives would be transformed because of the use of technology. And that has certainly happened, and the results are there for people to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It has happened. We've seen with UPI and so many
Correct.
other things.
Yes.
And as I had mentioned, in the introduction, all the revolution, the technology revolution we're seeing brings opportunities as well as challenges, which I want to discuss with you, because I can imagine that those challenges aren't very easy to balance. Yes. But like you said, right now, the digital economy and IT contributes 11 to 11.5 to the GDP. You expect to take it to 20% by 2026?
Yes, that's clearly the goal that our Prime Minister has set out. When he inherited the economy, if you want to call it that, in 2014, we were the fragile five of the world. And if you recall, 2014 all we heard then were about scams and high inflation, low growth, and investors running away from the country. That was the narrative about India. And the digital economy at that time was about 4.5% of our GDP. We are at about 11% today, and we will be at 20% by 26, 27. That is the goal. The digital economy, the innovation economy, is growing today at 2.8 times faster than the regular GDP. And to a large extent, this digital economy is being powered by young Indians. India today, this new India, is really being propelled, catalyzed, accelerated. Its velocity is being driven by young startups, young minds, young entrepreneurs all over the country. Our ambitions are new and completely reimagined. Our economy is the 5th largest in the world, far cry from the fragile 5. The government that used to be accused in the past of eating up 85% of every 100 rupees that left Delhi, as the famous quote from Rajiv Gandhi was, today is able to deliver 100 out of 100 rupees without any corruption, without any delay. So it has been a qualitative and quantitative transformation, and digital certainly has played a big role.
Yeah, and as you said, New India, you are one of the significant faces of New India, being, the Minister of State for IT and entrepreneurship. So coming to the Digital India Bill, right? It's been 24 years almost since the IT Act, the old IT Act. So it's long overdue now. So when can we expect that?
So I think we've made a lot of progress in creating a consensus around what the form and shape of this new act should be. What kind of problems should it address? What kind of opportunities should it catalyze? And we did something that has never been done in the history of Indian legislation, which is we did a pre-consultation before the legislation was even drafted. We got a lot of inputs from lawyers, techies, consumers, big tech companies, startups, and took all of that and made a draft. Unfortunately, because we were so insistent, and the Prime Minister is very insistent on public consultation, we certainly have run out of time to legislate that or introduce that for public consultation before the elections. So to answer your question, when will we have a successor legislation? I certainly think it will be after the elections are over, with the new government is sworn in.
And everybody is looking forward to that because, with AI and all, we're expecting a roadmap for AI. We're expecting a lot of things, which brings me to one issue. About the amendment to IT rules. Some months ago, the government notified setting up a fact-check unit to check whether news is fake news or not, and to basically instruct sites to pull down any fake news. But that amendment was challenged by satirist and comedian Kunal Kamra and by the Editors Guild. Anyway, that has been in the Bombay High Court. And the day that we are recording it, the Bombay High Court has given a split verdict. So I want to ask you, one judge has said that he's in favor of of Kunal Kamra and party, and the other judge is in favor of the amendment. So about this fact-check unit, it can be argued that it could curb freedom of speech.
I think those who argue that it curbs freedom of speech have obviously not read it, or have not understood what we are intending to do. And you alluded to this in one of your questions. As we go down and as 120 crore Indians start using the internet, we are at about 90 crore Indians today. And in 2014, we were just less than 20 crores. So a large number of Indians today look to the internet as a place that they can use for trusted transactions, trusted information that they can consume, trusted content. And so therefore, it is a responsibility of the government to ensure that the internet is safe and trusted. And I've said this in the past, even when I was an MP, that the internet cannot be a space where people believe the laws don't extend to and laws don't reach. So these are the two background points that I wanted to make. What the fact-check unit was going to do was, in the light of a large number of instances where information was being put as fake information. This is not news, not editorial, not an op-ed, but fake information about a government. We said a fact-check unit is required, and we did not say it, the intermediaries, the platform said we want a way for somebody to tell us what is right and wrong when some content is posted about the government, Now, why that is important is, in the rules today, there are 11 types of unlawful content that are prohibited on the internet. And the patently false information will falls afoul of the criminal law under forgery, whether it's deepfakes or whatever. These are prohibited under the criminal law as well as the IT Act and the IT rules. So when it is misinformation or patently false information that is prohibited, that certainly does not infringe on free speech, because right to free speech is not a right to lying.
Misinformation, right?
Yeah, or right to misinformation. Whatever the government does today is absolutely consistent with and harmonized with the Constitution and the constitutionally relevant restrictions on free speech and the criminal code. The reason the fact check unit is so important is that if somebody today puts out, and especially with 120 crore Indians online, puts out some absolutely patently false information about the government. For example, this government, for example, we saw this in the case of Manipur, we saw this in the case of the Punjab agitation, and we saw this in the case of more than 1,000 or 10,000 accounts managed by Khalistani elements, where they would allege something absolutely patently false about the government.
Okay.
So the intermediary, which is the platform, would not know whether that is right or wrong. So they would look to the government to help them understand, is this right or wrong, should we take it down? So what the fact check unit was going to do was essentially guide platforms in labeling content, not taking down.
Okay.
Labeling content as content that was false or disputed or misinformation. When you try and create a framework that is modern, contemporary, and deals with safety and trust, there is always this risk that people who don't understand it rush to the conclusion that this is some sort of an overreach or this is some sort of a censorship that is being attempted. But it's certainly not. The government has as much as a right and duty to protect its citizens from unlawful content as anybody has a right to have free speech.
Absolutely, and thank you for clarifying that, right? Because you said free speech doesn't mean that give you liberty to spread lies.
Yes.
You said you're not going to target, the government's not going to target opinions.
Look, we are in a democracy where the rule of law is primary. Even if the government says, Anushka, we want Facebook to take down your account because you've said something offensive about Rajeev Chandrasekhar, you can go to court and get a relief overnight. Okay. So this is a country, this is not Pakistan, this is not any of these countries where there's an autocracy, there is an absolutely healthy court system.
Fair enough, and left to be seen what happens, because a third judge, it's going to be referred to a third judge, right? Which brings me to a related issue.
Sure.
You have spoken about removing Section 79 from the IT Act, which deals with safe harbour.
Right.
Just for the sake of the audience, it means that social media intermediary will be liable for content uploaded by third-party users. And earlier, the IT Act gave them some immunity from prosecution, and that immunity was the norm. But now you want to make that immunity the exception rather than the norm.
So here is the reality of it. And I was on the IT committee in 2008 as a young MP when these amendments to the IT Act were being talked through by the committee. And I was the sole exception to the general view that this kind of safe harbor should be given to platforms. I opposed it then.
Yes.
And I opposed it then for the same reason that I oppose a clean immunity and a safe harbor without any conditions to platform. Because a platform today, especially in today's context, is so ubiquitous and can have so much of power to create toxicity and virality around things that are patently false, patently criminal, unlawful. I have recently dealt with a platform that was crammed with CSAM, child sexually abused material, and it cannot be anybody's case that because I'm a platform, I am absolved of all responsibility and accountability of the type of unlawful content that's on the platform. And remember in 2008 when they said this, that when they argued for it and that the then government gave in, the argument was that I am only a platform, I am a plain platform, but I have no power on what content is put on me. And the people who are putting content are the ones that should be held accountable for the unlawful or illegality of content. Which seemed like a very nice argument till they started providing anonymity to all the users. So you have a very interesting, I use the word interesting in a very sarcastic way. You have a situation where these big commercial multi-billion-dollar platforms that have hundreds of millions of users say we are not accountable for the stuff that goes on our platforms. Oh, and by the way, we will also allow all of the users who are doing unlawful content on our platform, whether they're CSAM or misinformation or creating public order issues or violating patents or national security issues, we will allow them anonymity. We have said that fine, if you are a platform with no content curation ability and capability, and you can prove that you are a dumb platform, a platform that has absolutely no intention to allow unlawful content, then you will get safe harbor.
Again, thank you for clarifying that. Because one does go by reports and what they hear. But what has been the response of big social media global giants?
We are emerging, we are now in an era and living in a time where everybody is a lot more informed about what is good and what is bad. We lived for about 2 decades believing, all of us, and I've seen the internet from its earliest days, and I'm that old, if somebody wants to know, when the internet was really born, that we thought the internet and everything on the internet was about good. It connected people, it allowed people to reach across borders, exchange ideas, messages. We all lived in the world of this techno-optimism, that it is all very good. In the last decade, 7-8 years in particular, we have also got our eyes open to the fact that the same internet that we believed was all about good can have a lot of bad. Definitely on our government's part, we have woken up to our responsibility that just like we assure law and order for any citizen in his or her neighborhood, it is as important for us to ensure that the internet is a safe and trusted place. In a lot of ways, the world is looking at what India is doing and following, taking a lead. These objectives of the open internet, the safe and trusted internet, the accountable internet that we have argued and its Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision is now increasingly being adopted by countries around the world. That we cannot allow platforms to be unaccountable by simply pretending that they are technology innovations. Okay. These are living, breathing, big technology platforms. They are technology platforms, but they are also platforms that allow a lot of harm to be created.
That's true. A lot of harm can be created. We've seen that with deepfakes and other things, which I'm going to come to. So basically, you're saying this blanket immunity is not a good thing, which,
it's
for sure.
It's not tenable anymore in today's world.
It's not tenable. But interestingly, I was reading, and I don't know how far this is accurate, because again, it's on the internet, that Elon Musk, shortly after he took over Twitter and renamed it X, he had given an interview to, I think, BBC or whatever, and said that in India, we cannot guarantee the same amount of freedom of speech as we do in the West, that their laws are a little stricter.
But it's a fact. Look, the US has their First Amendment, and it's a constitutionally guaranteed right to free speech. Our constitution talks about free speech as Article 19 as a fundamental right with reasonable restrictions. So obviously our constitution envisages a very different framework, that it does not envisage a citizen using free speech to create national security problems, using free speech to create law and order problems, using speech to create defamation. These are prohibited under our constitution.
Yes.
So therefore, it is absolutely correct that a platform that is domiciled in San Francisco or Timbuktu or wherever cannot simply conflate his home environment and his home constitution and his home law to the Indian scenario. None of these companies go to China and complain that China simply blocks them out.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is the lay of the land in China. In India, this is the lay of the land. This is what our constitution prescribes, and we are certainly duty bound to enforce the constitution.
Yeah, you can't judge us by Western standards, and at the same time, we're a lot freer than China, and that is
And
a
absolutely,
fact.
Anushka, and this is the delusion in some cases that some of these big tech platforms lived in. Till in 2021, it was made very clear to them that there is an Indian law. This is the Indian citizen. The Indian citizen has certain constitutional and other legal rights.
And I know that you have been an advocate of free speech yourself.
Yes.
Back in 2015, you lobbied for Article 66A being dropped, which basically says that 66A made it a punishable offence for any person to send offensive info using a computer or electronic device. And then it was dropped. And now the court in 2022 has said all pending cases under 66A stand closed.
Yeah, so I think there is a tendency for some people to be slightly patronizing and talk down about free speech to the government, as if the government somehow is conditioned to always violate free speech. This government certainly is not, and I am part of this government. And you know that how I've fought for Section 66A and other aspects of freedom of speech. So I have absolutely no problem in outing and contradicting some of these so-called self-styled experts who give these blanket characterizations without understanding what is being developed as a framework, and say that this is censorship or this is something against free speech.
You have been a part of many landmark laws, even with data privacy. You were one of the first people and one of the petitioners also.
Yes.
In the case, which basically asks for protection of privacy to be a fundamental right.
Absolutely. So look, that's sometimes I pinch myself and I ask myself, am I really living this life? Because I agitated and I argued as a petitioner in the share single case that privacy should be declared a fundamental right. And here I am being given an opportunity by the Honorable Prime Minister to help draft a legislation that will enshrine that determination. So who would have thought? Who would have thought in 2010-11 when I set out to fight the UPA government on the issue of privacy, that 7, 10, 8 years later, that I would be given this opportunity to help frame this legislation, DPDP legislation.
Yeah.
And the Honorable President today alluded to the DPDP in her speech as well. So it has certainly been almost unreal in my mind that I could have traveled this whole journey from being an opposition MP, doing a PIL to get a declaration of privacy as a fundamental right, to then being a minister, having an opportunity to legislate or create the legislation to enshrine that.
Amazing journey. I know we had the DPDP come out last year.
Correct.
Of course, and also another very important act. And as you said, your journey has been amazing, right? Which brings, and long way to go. There's a lot more to be done. So your journey is definitely nowhere near its end. But AI, again, huge area of potential. So I want to talk about that. But then let's first address deepfakes. You have made many announcements recently about non-compliance, and then that will, make you implement more stringent rules and even possibly blocking sites. So what could these more stringent actions be? And ever since you've made these announcements, do you think it's making a difference to compliance?
No, look, it is certainly a good thing when the government continues to stress to the platforms, especially these big, huge platforms, that they have to be absolutely, explicitly, all the time compliant with law. And so there is absolutely no harm in me repeating it, even if I sound like a stuck record. But in the case of deepfakes, the conversations I had with these platforms were slightly more nuanced and maybe a little, let us say, dissatisfied. It sounded a little bit angry. And the reason for that is from October 2022, the government, when it notified the IT rules and introduced 31B5, Rule 31B5, which talks specifically about misinformation and patently false information, we had alerted the platforms to two things. One is that all of these prohibited unlawful content have consequences under the criminal law. And second is that misinformation, we said in October 2022, is extremely important for them to create a framework to regulate and avoid and take down, because we anticipated then and predicted that deepfakes are around the corner. Now, we said that April 23, we re-notified it to address gaming, and boom comes deepfakes, and all of these people put their hands up and say, we're not ready for it. So this was a slightly angry meeting, because certainly the Honorable Prime Minister had, in a sense, reminded us in the ministry that not enough was being done about deepfakes. Mm-hmm. And so when I called the platforms, I told them, look, is there anybody who believes that misinformation does not automatically mean deepfakes? So all of them, to a man and woman, said, no, we understand it means deepfake. So therefore, why is it that they are not doing enough to make it very difficult for your users to be posting deepfakes and creating unlawful content? Because that results, like I said, Section 469, 177, all of these provisions under the criminal code, you can be prosecuted for it. So that conversation has led to slightly more detailed prescriptive rules on what the platforms ought to do to deal with deepfakes. And those are under finalization, and we hope to notify them soon.
So what are these? You said the rules are under finalization, but can you give us some idea of the advisory given platforms?
There are 2 or 3 broad things that we are talking about in these rules. One is that all the platforms have to explicitly inform in the terms of use of the platform to the user what are the 11 or 12 prohibited unlawful content areas. Okay. So there is no point the platform simply blandly saying don't do unlawful content, because not every user is a lawyer or not every user is a law student. The second is that if there is a violation of the terms of use, the user must be sent a notice, and the consequences of the violation of the terms of use or using unlawful content will be either the platform will get prosecuted under the relevant sections of the criminal code, or the user will get prosecuted under the relevant section of the criminal code. We are now telling platforms, you have to now communicate more and better with your users, so that the good users are not mixed up with the bad users, and the bad users certainly are given clearly warnings by you or signals by you on these are the areas that you should not trespass in. So these are the areas that we are doing, nothing earth-shatteringly different, but we are certainly telling the platforms to do more about educating their users and creating awareness of the users of what unlawful content consequences will be.
Okay, so terms of use that lay user can actually understand.
And is reminded of.
Right, absolutely. And because we saw with Rashmika's case, that deepfake, they have been arrested.
Yes.
They've been arrested.
Yes.
But it's a difficult process to identify. Right? They had to go through some 500 accounts and analyze the video. So it's not easy. It's very time consuming.
Yeah, so look, it's not our job in the government to make things easy for the platforms.
Yeah.
It is our job to say these are the harms, these are the illegalities. Platforms have to create their own methods on how they will deal with that. And in my opinion, the best and the most important thing for them to do without failing is to constantly remind their consumers that if you violate the law, there are consequences. Yeah. If you travel in an aeroplane today, if you do something unlawful, you get on a no-fly list.
Right.
If you go out and do something unlawful in the market, there are consequences, there is an FIR filed against you and you're put in jail. Yes. How is it that on the internet and social media, when somebody does something bizarre and totally violative of law, the platforms don't do anything about it?
So basically you're saying these platforms are kind of above the law. Now you have to bring them within the purview of the law and have strong deterrents. Because
they were not above the law, they couldn't care about the law.
They couldn't care about the law. Yeah. They weren't bothered. Okay, fine. So you have to have strong deterrents, which is true. Yes. Coming to the good part of AI, you have said we can't demonize AI, we have to harness it, and we have to develop our own sovereign AI.
Absolutely. AI is, in my opinion, as somebody who's been in tech for 30-35 years, is certainly the greatest invention of our times. And it is going to be a kinetic enabler of our digital economy. It is going to create innovation. It is going to make things possible that we did not think was possible even 5 years ago, in medicine discovery, in healthcare, in governance, in education, in national security, in areas that we absolutely believed it was difficult to get these breakthroughs. AI will certainly take us in directions and at a velocity that was unimaginable just 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So that is absolutely clear. Our vision, our Prime Minister's vision is very clear. We want to harness AI in a manner that it can make an impact on the people of India, whether it's in governance, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, whether it's in agriculture. Imagine today the power for a farmer if through AI he can predict cropping patterns, rainfall patterns, the soil nutrient pattern, and he does his cropping, does his own agriculture based on these models that tell him what to do and what not to do. So I think it's a very, very powerful, I'm very excited by it. The Prime Minister is very, very supportive and is very committed to ensuring that the India AI program, this mission of AI, is a mission that will be very significantly creating the next wave of startups. Yeah. I call it the next wave, and we are certainly something that looking forward to it. In 2014, we were an ITES dominated digital economy. Mm-hmm. In 2021, 20 to 23, we have become a powerful digital innovation economy with a tremendous amount of work in the consumer internet and the internet space. By the time we reach 2730, we would be, and we already have, an Indian flag planted in almost every segment of the digital economy, new, old, or emerging. India was a consumer of technology for 30 years. In the coming India decade, we will be the architect, designer, producer of technology, devices, products, and services and solutions, like very few other countries.
Okay, I mean, all sounds absolutely fantastic. And I've seen your social media. You interact with a lot of young entrepreneurs and startups and things like that. That's amazing. And obviously, this is something Modi ji is very, very enthusiastic about. So he's extremely hands-on in this.
Yeah, no, so look, he has a very simple construct, which I've learned from him, which is the biggest stakeholders in the future of India are the young Indians. Okay. And they are the ones who should be engaged with. We should hear their thoughts, their vision, their challenges, how they see what is their worldview in terms of opportunities. And what we do as a government, as a ministry, should be aligned to their expectations and their dreams, rather than something that we cook up in a small room in the ministry.
Okay, wonderful. Just one more thing with AI is that we've seen a lot of copyright disputes arising, especially in the US with New York Times. Yeah.
So I think that is certainly a big piece of very fundamental jurisprudence that will emerge out of this case that the New York Times has filed against OpenAI and other platforms, because a lot of these AI platforms, these generative AI platforms, depend on scraping the internet to train their models. And that when they scrape the internet, they're actually scraping somebody else's content. And the benefits or the value of the monetization of the chat or the generative AI model is not available to whose content it was originally. So I think this is going to be a landmark case where the law will essentially be written, at least in the US, and we will certainly learn something from that, about who really should maximize the value from a content. Is it the content creator, or is it the platform that represents the content, or is it an AI model that scrapes the platform, gets the content, and then trains a model? Yeah. So where does the value lie? If the whole value is concentrated in the AI, generative AI model that is scraping the platform, or the platform that is in turn hosting the content, and the content creator ends up getting 5 naya paisa out of the 100 naya paisa that has been created, that is certainly unfair. Yes. And there is an asymmetry. So one of the areas that we had in a sense predicted and have put into the Digital India Act is this: what should be the content monetization, content value sharing formula going forward? You will agree with this, that the most value is in creating the content. It should not be that the value is in distributing the content. that should be, in my opinion, the least expensive of the whole value chain. But actually, it's the inverse that is happening today. The poor content creator, the young content creator today gets very little for his or her content, and the gatekeeper, the platform, gets most of it.
No, I totally agree. The most value is in creating the content.
I can see the most hard work is in this. It's certainly
Yeah.
in creating the content. And so I think that's certainly something that we should build a consensus around.
Yes, and this whole process of training generative AI models and all that. So yes, we look forward to a fair legislation on that front. Another area of concern is children and social media. Rishi Sunak some time ago made an announcement that he's even considering banning like under 16-year-olds from social media. I know that this is an area of concern for you because you've raised questions. You've raised questions about the algorithms of social media in Parliament. You've talked about child sex abuse and a lot of these things in Parliament. So it is an area of concern for you. But how would you tackle it?
No, look, I think this is a debate that needs to be a broader debate, and it's really not a debate that should be led by government as it should be by parents and educators, and indeed in some cases children as well. Yeah. Because we have made a start in the vis-a-vis gaming. Yeah. And we have brought into the IT rules this concept of making sure that gaming is not addictive and does not cause harm to children. In India, where parents, children, and our relationship with our children is a very, very deep relationship, and it's a very traditional, to a large part in India, it's a very traditional family unit and a family culture. This type of addictive culture that is spawned by these platforms is certainly something that we should have a debate on. I do not believe, nor does the Prime Minister, that the government should be a policeman on this.
Okay, but we did ban TikTok and PUBG.
Yes.
So
therefore, whenever we find that there is a platform, a game, or anything that is violating the current Indian laws, we have no hesitation in banning them.
Moving on to a bit of the general picture,
Sure.
There's a couple of questions on, now this is an important year, right? General elections.
Sure.
I'm sure you'll be one of the star campaigners. For
Well,
your
I don't
party.
know if I'm a star campaigner, but I think my own view on this is every Indian who has experienced the governance and the transformative nature of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's governance is a star campaigner. So I don't think ministers are to be star campaigners. It is every Indian citizen today who has a view and believes in a Viksit Bharat, a developed India, is the star campaigner for the BJP.
Okay, so you're saying we're moving away from emotive issues, religious issues, and voting on development.
No, look, all of those issues will remain intact. There's no issue that you should hide from and not have a discussion on. But at the same time, you should trust a party that basically lays its cards on the table and says, this is the direction we want to take the country. This is the inclusiveness by which we want to make sure the opportunities are available to every Indian, regardless of whether they're this faith or that caste or this caste. And we want to take the country forward. And we have done so in the last 10 years, absolutely without any fear of contradiction. Even our bitterest critic will accept that the last 10 years have been transformative. And so if anybody wants to compete with the BJP, they will have to figure out a way of competing with us on ideas, on a better vision for India, and a better performance on governance. But you can't be looting people in Jharkhand and Karnataka and say that you want to compete with the BJP on an all-India basis. On that, Rahul Gandhi will find that this doesn't work anymore.
Last question. Can you give us 3 mantras for success, let's say for startups?
No, it's absolutely, I don't think the mantras, these are just realities. Hard work and determination is certainly one thing. Second is absolute clarity and laser focus on what you want to do and where you want to go and what your objective is. And the third is knowledge and skills. You need to be smart, you need to be competitive. Today this is a country with 60% of our population is less than 35. Everybody today is ambitious, wants to do well, wants to do better. Regardless of what space you are in, you are going to have to be very smart, very knowledgeable, very determined, and very hardworking.
Okay. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you,
such an
Anushka.
inspiring and positive discussion. We look forward to IT contributing 20% to GDP in 2026, 2027. Look forward to the new Digital India Bill and everything else. Thank you so much
Anushka.
for joining us.
Thank you.